They thought they had seen every nightmare war could bring until the horizon itself turned black. Thousands of American ships were crawling toward the shore like a moving wall of steel. Inside the Japanese high command, silence fell. One admiral leaned forward and whispered something that made every man in the room go pale. "We've made our greatest mistake." But before he could explain, another officer interrupted. He had different news. The Emperor's message had arrived, and it couldn't have come at a worse time. Then someone looked closer at the reports and froze. There was a second wave approaching, 3 times larger than the first. An officer muttered 5 quiet words that ended all debate. Those words would be studied for generations because in that instant, Japan's leaders understood exactly what was coming. June 6, 1944, D-Day. The moment of realization. Across the ocean, in a room deep inside Tokyo's War Ministry, the Japanese High Command stood motionless. They weren't watching their own war, they were watching Europe. And what they saw terrified them. The Americans had done something every nation thought was impossible. Over 5,000 ships appeared. Off the coast of France, more vessels than Japan had seen in its entire history. Admiral Yamamoto's worst prediction was unfolding. But he was no longer alive to see it. The officers in Tokyo understood something the rest of the world didn't. This was the moment America proved what its true strength really was. One general reached for a cigarette, his hand trembling. The others watched in silence. They all knew what this meant for Japan. But what they said that night would remain classified for decades. Those words were too dangerous to reveal, because they exposed Japan's deepest fear, a fear that was now becoming real. 3 years earlier, Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto had made a prophecy. He warned Tokyo against attacking the United States. His words were calm, measured, almost prophetic. "I can run wild for 6 months, maybe a year. After that, I have no confidence." The cabinet ignored him. They thought he was being overly cautious. Pearl Harbor happened anyway. Now, as they watched the D-Day invasion unfold, every line of Yamamoto's warning echoed in their minds. The Americans had landed 150,000 troops in a single day, more men than Japan could field in an entire campaign. Japan's navy was down to barely 50 ships. One officer pulled out Yamamoto's old report, its pages worn and faded from constant reading. He pointed to a line that matched their current reality word for word. And then came another report, one far more terrifying. It was called The Industrial Nightmare. General Tojo stood at a window, a crumpled paper trembling in his hands. Intelligence from America. The numbers didn't make sense. The US was building 1 new aircraft carrier every month. Japan took years to complete just 1. American factories produced more planes in a week than Japan could make in a month. The assembly lines never stopped. 3 shifts, 24 hours a day. A machine that couldn't be bombed, starved, or slowed. Then came the number that silenced the room. Over 5,000. American ships had crossed the English Channel. Japan had 50. Tojo finally spoke, his voice barely a whisper. "We have awakened a sleeping giant." Whether Yamamoto truly said those words after Pearl Harbor or not didn't matter anymore. The metaphor had become reality. But there was something else buried in those intelligence files, something even worse. A message from the Emperor himself. Hirohito had requested a meeting. It was rare for him to speak directly about military affairs. The High Command gathered inside the Imperial Palace, carrying maps and reports, none of them containing good news. The Emperor asked one quiet question. If America can invade Europe with this force, what will they bring to Japan? No one spoke. The numbers told the story. Japan was closer to American bases than France was. If the US could land that many men across an ocean, they could bring even more across the Pacific. Finally, one admiral broke the silence. Your Majesty, they won't need to invade. Hirohito frowned. Explain. The answer revealed Japan's greatest fear, its strategic nightmare. But before the officer could finish, an aide burst into the room, holding a trembling message from the Philippines. 5 words that changed everything. The Americans are coming back. General Yamashita read the decoded message twice. He knew what it meant. General MacArthur was keeping his promise. He had returned to the Philippines. But this was no longer just about the islands. Once America retook them, their bombers would be within range of Tokyo itself. Daily attacks. No place left to hide. The High Command studied their maps again. Germany was collapsing. The Soviet Union was advancing. That meant every ounce of American power, every plane, every ship, every bomb would now turn toward Japan. One officer closed his eyes. We cannot win this. The words hung heavy in the air. For the first time, they said it aloud. That night, a smaller, secret meeting took place. Only the highest-ranking commanders attended. No aides, no records. They discussed the unthinkable peace terms, surrender conditions, ways to end the war. But surrender was forbidden in Japan's military code. Death was considered more honorable than defeat. And the Americans wanted unconditional surrender, which meant even the emperor's position might be stripped away. They were trapped. They couldn't win. They couldn't surrender. All they could do was delay the inevitable. One general suggested something desperate. Make every invasion so costly that America seeks peace. It was their final, hopeless plan. None of them knew that in the deserts of New Mexico, American scientists were creating a weapon that would make every Japanese strategy meaningless. By the summer of 1945, the situation was beyond saving. Germany had fallen. Japan stood alone against America, Britain, and the Soviet Union. Every night, American bombers burned Japanese cities to the ground. Tokyo was gone. Osaka gone. The sky itself glowed red. Yet the military leaders refused to stop. They prepared for Operation Downfall, the invasion of Japan itself. Their estimates predicted millions of deaths, but they told themselves it would preserve Japan's honor. Then August 6th came. One bomb, one city. Hiroshima vanished in a single flash. 3 days later, Nagasaki followed. The High Command finally understood. There was no honor in extinction. August 14th, 1945, the Imperial Palace, the final meeting. The military was deadlocked. Half wanted to fight to the last. Half wanted to surrender. Emperor Hirohito broke the silence. In calm, formal court language, he said that the war situation has not necessarily developed to Japan's advantage. It was the most understated truth in history. Then he said the words that ended it all. We must bear the unbearable. Those words ended World War II in the Pacific. The same men who had watched D-Day unfold 3 years earlier realized Yamamoto had been right all along. America's industrial power was unstoppable. Every fear, every calculation, every prophecy had come true. The moment they saw those ships at Normandy, Japan's fate was already sealed.